Now, although this may sound simple, how to apply concealer is something that not everyone gets right. So what I'm going to be doing today is showing you exactly how you can apply concealer, blend concealer, everything you need to know about applying concealer, and it's in detail and it's going to make sure that you get it right each time. And it actually breaks it all down for you so that you fully understand as to why we apply concealer in a certain way, where we apply it, why we apply it there, why we blend the way that we do, everything you need to do. So let's get started. Okay, so first things first, do you apply your concealer under foundation or over foundation? It's completely down to your personal preference. So what do you prefer? What feels easier to you? What result do you like better? My personal preference is to apply the concealer before foundation, but I do know that there are still so many people who apply concealer after foundation. Now, let me just very quickly explain the difference. If you apply concealer underneath foundation, so before you apply your foundation, you apply your concealer, then what that means is that you are creating a more soft focus finish to your skin, because the concealer in texture and in coverage is quite harsh in comparison to a foundation, right? So what that means is what you're doing is applying all that heavy stuff, getting all your coverage done, getting the thick stuff there, and then going over with a very light coverage foundation to just tie it all in together. It's like a veil of color to tie everything together. So it stops that harsh kind of look that you can get with concealer. Because if you were to apply your foundation first, which by the way is totally fine, I sometimes do it myself as well. If you were to apply your foundation first and then apply your concealer, what you're doing is you're applying the most harshest product last, which means it's more likely to look harsh. You're not that likely to get that kind of soft focus finish. But not only that, if you were to apply your foundation first and your concealer after, it can sometimes look a little bit disconnected because your concealer is 9 times out of 10 a little bit lighter than your foundation, right? Which means where you've applied it is much more obvious if you apply your foundation underneath as opposed to on top. Hopefully that hasn't confused you, but I am going to be applying my concealer on top of foundation because I know a lot of you do that, and I've got plenty of videos showing you how to apply concealer underneath foundation, but I thought today I'm going to show you how to apply a foundation on top because so many of you guys are used to it. So I'm going to apply a foundation very quickly to my skin. I'm going to apply my NARS Sheer Glow foundation in Aruba. I'm just getting some on the back of my hand. I'm going to get my foundation brush, which is my Beauty 106 brush. Now I'm just going to buff this foundation into the brush before I actually put it onto my skin. By the way, underneath I already have primer on. Now I'm just buffing this in. So as you can see, I'm just bouncing it all over the skin. There you go. So we've got a veil of color over the skin now. Now this is where you want to go in with your concealer. Okay, so now I've got my concealer, which is my Tarte Shape Tape Concealer. This is the concealer that I love, and I'm going to apply this on certain areas. Now, what does concealer do? Concealer will give you coverage to things like dark circles, blemishes, discoloration, things like that. So concealer generally is known to have more coverage than your typical foundation. You would use this on the areas that you need it, but you also want to kind of decide what kind of coverage you want. Like, if you're using it on dark circles, do you really need like a super full coverage concealer, or would you be okay with a sheer to medium coverage concealer? Because you really want to look at what you're trying to cover and how difficult is it to cover it, and how important is it that you completely eradicate any signs of any dark circles. So for me, I just want to kind of get that brightness along with kind of covering up the dark circles here, but I also like to use concealer to lift certain areas, and I'm going to show you how you do that. Now, with a foundation like Tarte Shape Tape, what happens is it dries a bit quick. So not as quick as some of the others, but it is kind of self-setting, but I would always recommend to always set on top anyway with a powder. Never just rely on a self-setting concealer to set itself, because it doesn't work as well as putting a pressed powder on top or a loose powder on top. So what I want to do is apply this on certain areas so that I get the lift, I get the coverage, and it's also not going to end up looking cakey. And I want to do my best to ensure that it doesn't look so disconnected, because I have decided to apply my concealer on top of foundation, meaning that realistically, if I'm not careful about how and where I apply this and the color that I use, it can end up looking quite different to the foundation. You'll be able to obviously see where I've applied concealer. You must have seen sometimes, some people, you can see it's really obviously white here in certain areas and it just looks wrong. That's what we're trying to avoid. So if you are going to be applying your concealer on top of foundation, I would highly recommend going for a concealer which is very close to your skin color. If you are going to be applying a concealer underneath your foundation and you want brightness, I would go with a color which is a little bit brighter than your skin tone, because you can get away with it, because on top of the concealer you can apply a foundation which is a bit warmer. So what we're going to do here is apply this in certain areas, but we want to make sure that we blend this correctly. Now in order to blend it correctly, you do want to make sure that you have a beauty blender. It's got to be damp and you've got to make sure that you've squeezed out all the excess water. So let's go. A few things I want to do. I want to apply it right here. So let me just explain this in a second, and then we'll move to the other areas. So this area here is the eye area. This is where we want to apply it to get rid of any dark circles, but also help to lift the area. Now, when you are holding your beauty blender, you want to make sure the highest tip is up. So we're using this is the top of the sponge basically. Now, what we want to do is keep the concealer where it is on certain areas. So this bit here, why have we applied it there? We've applied it there to lift the area. It's going to help with this section too, but ultimately it's there to lift the area, so it just makes our eyes look a bit more lifted. Now the way you want to blend this is you want to press and you want to bounce. Now this happens so quickly. Like, look, it's already blended in. You don't want to drag the sponge. You want to keep it like that. And that's going to help to just give it that lift and stay in that area. So you want to do the same here. Keep it in the area. And there you go. That's given us that very slight lift. Now we're going to work on this bit here. Now this is where we want it to cover the dark circles, but we also don't want it to look super cakey. And we don't want it to cover the entire area there. We just kind of want it to give us the effect that we want, but we don't want to mask the whole area. So we're going to stretch by making that face. I know you don't want to, but it stretches your skin. So we're then going to bounce. Same way we did for the side part of the eye. And can you see I'm just bouncing across here, but we're not taking it all the way out. We're just bouncing towards the middle there and there. So we're keeping along that area. Immediately we've got that nice coverage on the under eye area, but it doesn't look crazy cakey or all white. We're going to do the same here. So bounce. It's much easier when your skin is taut. That's why I'm stretching my face. Can you see I'm bouncing? I'm never dragging. Like when I'm moving to this side, it's bouncing to that side. If you want to move where you are pressing the sponge, bounce to the area you want to go to. Don't drag. There you go. I'm happy with that because we've got that nice coverage and it doesn't look crazy cakey. So now we do want to do a few more areas like coverage in certain areas and also to lift. So here are the other areas I'm going to show you, which I've noticed a lot of other people do apply concealer in. I don't necessarily apply it in these areas all the time, but I just want to show you. One area is here. I just want to add that if you are focusing more on brightening than you are on coverage, then I would suggest going for a much lighter coverage concealer. Don't go for a medium or full coverage concealer if you are purely looking for brightening in certain areas, because you can very easily use a very light coverage concealer for that. Why would you use a medium or full coverage concealer when you don't need the coverage and you only want the brightening? So it just means that there's less likelihood of it looking cakey. If you're looking to cover as well, then obviously go for a medium coverage or full coverage, depending on what you're trying to cover. So what I want to do here is blend this as well. Now you can use your sponge, and that's what I would personally use, but I also know that some of you do prefer using brushes. This section I'm going to blend with the brush just purely because I know there are people out there who like to use brushes, but otherwise personally I would stick to blending it with a sponge. So I want to get a fluffy brush. I'm using this one here, which is my BEAUTY N16 brush. Now what you want to do is you want to keep it in the same place. So you want to do a similar kind of like bouncing motion as what you would do with a sponge, but you're doing it with a brush. So here I'm keeping it in that area, but every time I'm lifting off, I'm moving to another area. So I'm not dragging at all. I'm bouncing the brush. There you go. Honestly, as easy as that. There are a couple of other areas that I'm going to apply this. One being here and here. And that's primarily for lift there. But I do have a little bit of darkness there, so I like the way that it gives me that slight coverage there too. Now I'm going to go back to the sponge because this is what I would use generally. And what we want to do is keep it in the same area. Now what I notice is sometimes what happens is when people are using a sponge or a brush, but especially a sponge, they will kind of like bounce and go like, firstly the bounce is too big, but secondly they're just going from here to there to there to there. There's no kind of like method to what they're doing. Now what my point is, and I know I've probably said this a million times, but honestly it's the only way that it really sinks in. So you want to keep the bouncing together. So you don't want to bounce here then bounce there. You want to stick to a very kind of like condensed area. So can you see you bouncing? It's staying in the same area. And when we want to go up a little bit, we bounce there. We're not here, 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 right? We're keeping it in the same area. Let's do it here. And again, I'm stretching my skin so that my skin is taut. There you go, that is done. It's honestly so easy. It's not as difficult as what it may seem. A big part of the issue or like problems can be kind of eradicated by picking the right type of concealer and getting the right type of coverage, right color for you. That is really, really, really important because then it can completely change the way concealer looks on your skin. Okay, so can you see it doesn't look disconnected now because the color that we chose, which by the way is 38N medium tan neutral. I usually go for a lighter shade than this, but this is the color I use if I'm using my concealer on top of my foundation. So that's why you're not looking at super bright white under eyes or bright like patches everywhere, because I've stuck to a concealer shade, which is very similar to my skin tone. So let me just reiterate that. It's a really, really important point here. If you apply your concealer underneath foundation, you can go for a brightening concealer. So a concealer which is a little bit lighter than your skin tone. If you are going to be applying a concealer on top of your foundation, you must make sure that the color is close to your skin color, because otherwise it's going to look wrong, it's going to look patchy, it's going to look white in all the wrong areas. Okay, so what we would do next is get the setting powder. Now I just want to very quickly explain that when you have applied your concealer like this, it is very easy for it to settle into lines and for it to start to look a bit more cakier, because cakier, I don't know if that's a word, cakier, a bit more cakey, but basically what happens is if you leave a really long time between applying your concealer and everything to setting it with powder, I personally feel from experience the result isn't as nice. I don't know how to explain that to you or why it is the case, but all I can tell you is from putting makeup on thousands and thousands of times on myself and on clients, is that when you've applied your base, if you leave quite a long time until you apply your setting powder, it just doesn't look as flawless and amazing. It actually tends to look a bit more cakey. And you know, now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm thinking maybe that time period of from you finishing your base, as in every like concealer foundation, up until you apply your setting powder, that space, the longer you leave it, the longer you're allowing your natural oils to come through. So that's all I can put it down to. But you want to make sure you kind of like set it pretty quick. Now this is what I like to do. I like to have my setting powder ready. I like to get my sponge. I like to use the back of it to just go over the areas that I know that my concealer or foundation may settle into lines. I also like to do this when I feel like maybe I have applied a bit too much concealer or foundation. Like it just goes over and picks up any excess that isn't really necessary, you know? So I just go over and do that. Let me just do my creases there. I get my powder. First place that I powder is my under eyes. And then I apply it to my jawline. And then I make sure that there are no gaps, because it can be really obvious otherwise where you haven't applied it. Right, this is where I get my large powder brush, which is my Hourglass Veil brush. And I just dust over to take off all this powder. Then I get a smaller brush, which is my Real Techniques brush, and I just dust off the powder from my under eye. There you go. As you can see, the base is done. So even after applying powder, you can see that there's no patchiness. It doesn't look like it's overly bright in certain areas. I feel like I've got good coverage, but I also can see that I can still see my freckles, and I'm happy with that. So obviously if you want to cover it, you can go ahead and apply more concealer. That's absolutely fine. But ultimately it really depends what your main aim is when you're applying concealer. Are you trying to cover dark circles? Are you trying to cover pigmentation, like hyperpigmentation? Are you trying to kind of cover just darkness in certain areas that you feel needs brightening? Are you after just brightening more than actual coverage? Think about what it is you want first, because sometimes what happens is we get so consumed with the what, how, where, that we forget about why. Like, why do you need it? What is it that you're trying to get rid of? What is it that is your problem? Because then you can actually figure out what it is you need to solve the problem. So sometimes, like I said, we just dive into like trending products and stuff, and we don't actually think about what is best suited to us, which may not even be a trending product. I am gonna just add a little bit of lip balm. I'm just gonna add some mascara and stuff and just finish this off very quickly. By the way, I am obsessed with this. This is the new Rhode Peptide Lip Tint in Cinnamon Roll. Oh my God. Oh my God, I'm obsessed with it. It just smells so good. I just feel like I'm eating cinnamon rolls. It's so good. I am just gonna add some mascara. I'm just gonna use my Charlotte Tilbury Exaggerize Volume Mascara. There you go. Oh my God, have any of you guys started the Swede Lash Serum yet? I have told you guys to get it. It's not often that I'm like, guys, you need to go and buy this. As in, like, I feel like I'm pretty, you know, this is how it works for me. Up to you, but honestly, this is going to change your life. The Swede Lash Serum is just amazing. It's been a game changer for my lashes. I know I can see that some of you guys have bought it, so tell me what you think. Like, obviously, actually you can't yet because you need a good few weeks to see results. So I do get it. So wait, just wait those few weeks, see how amazing your lashes are gonna look, and then tell me. They do a brow serum too, and I started using that. I'm only on like week 2, so I can't really tell you what I think of it yet. I haven't noticed much of a difference from the brow serum yet, but I'm hoping it is transformative the same way that these lashes, like the lash serum was. Oh no, I got a bit of mascara on my skin. That is a live beauty blender. What is blender? Blunder, I was gonna say. It's not really live, but I will show you how to get rid of it. That's a bit annoying. You gotta wait for it to dry, so let's just let it dry. So let me very quickly just add a bit of bronzer. This is just my Sunstalker. I'm just gonna add a little bit of bronzer here. I just want to finish off this whole look because I just want to show you. Okay, I've just got my Charlotte Tilbury Iconic Nude. So now that you can see the lips done, there's a bit of bronzer, the mascara is on, I've just remembered I need to take that off so that you guys can see how to do that. I am just going to get the back of a brow pencil, so you just want to get a spoolie. Now the most important part is to remember that you have to let it dry, and then you just want to scrape it off. There you go, it's gone. It's that easy. Biggest mistake you can make is try and take it off immediately, because it's going to be wet, it's going to smudge, and then it's a complete disaster. I didn't even put any lipstick on actually, I'm fine with a bit of lip balm and lip pencil. But yeah, that is how you apply concealer. I've made it really easy to understand. I really wanted to break it down so I'm not kind of mixing in a whole lot, like load of other stuff, like explaining how you do that. I just want to stick to kind of really giving you a full breakdown of how to like apply your concealer and blend it, and exactly why, what you need, you know? So hopefully that has answered any questions you may have and has perfected your concealer game. Don't forget, I do have an online publication called the Beauty Breakfast Club, which is a beauty community where I have newsletters coming out every few days. You have a whole load of stuff on there, product reviews, best makeup, worst makeup, tricks, hacks, just general articles on new beauty treatments. It could be absolutely anything. It's really kind of wholesome, wellness, everything mixed into that. And I'd love to see you over there. There are two options for subscription. One is free, which gives you access to most of the site. You do have another one, which is basically the equivalent of getting yourself a coffee every month, so hardly anything. And that basically gives you access to everything, including an extra newsletter, so special newsletters just for you, and a chat room where we can chat. So I'd really love to see you over there and love to see your support there. I do have another YouTube channel which is primarily podcasts and a few vlogs here and there. I'd love to see your support there too. Now if you do have any questions, let me know. Don't forget, all the products are listed in my description along with discount codes, so make sure you check those out. You don't want to miss out on a sneaky little discount. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button so that you never miss any of my future videos. Until the next video, take care and I'll see you soon.